Hello again, feral friends and fellow nature nerds. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Dirt Dispatches number 44. I'm your host, Tim the Nature Nerd O'Hara. Did you know, because I just learned it recently, that the animal that we call an elk here in North America, Cervus canadensis, the second largest species of deer, has tusks, or at least they used to have tusks. I was clued into this fascinating piece of nature trivia by an elk hunter friend, John Esses, who generously donated a pair of these elk tusks to me. So shout out and thanks to John. Now, when we think of tusks, we usually think about elephants or walruses. Now, elk tusks, though, aren't that big, at least not anymore. Located on the sides of the upper jaw, these canine-like quote-unquote teeth are made of ivory, just like an elephant tusk, but they're much, much smaller. These tusks are rectangular and about the size of my thumbnail. But there's a big difference between elk teeth and elk ivories. Elk have normal teeth, bottom teeth and molars on the top and bottom, but no top front teeth, only their ivories, which are where you'd expect to find canine teeth in other animals. Both bulls and cows have these ivories, but bulls are typically larger. Calves are born with what are called baby ivories that have only the tip exposed or maybe nothing exposed at all. The tusks take several years to fully break through, and then they wear down over time. They don't touch any other teeth, but they do look a lot like large teeth, and they range in color from bone white to shades of yellow and brown depending on the elk's diet. Now, in our modern day elk, these ivories don't serve any real purpose, but it's thought that hundreds of thousands of years ago, the ancestors of our North American elk had full-fledged tusks, similar to the Asian muntjac deer, which still has upper canine tusks that look like the pointy canine teeth of, say, dogs or cats or any other predator. Now, back then, elk's antlers were smaller, and scientists speculate that the elk used their tusks for things like self-defense and establishing dominance and rooting around for food. But can you imagine a massive elk walking around with saber-toothed tiger-like fangs sticking out of its mouth? It sounds like a mutant animal from some horror movie. Now, over time, for whatever reason, the elk's antlers got bigger, and in doing so they took over the roles of self-defense and establishing dominance. And as that happened, the tusks got smaller since they were no longer vital to the elk's survival. And while most other deer species, with a few exceptions, that also had these type of tusks lost them altogether through evolution, the elk retained theirs in this diminutive vestigial form. But while antlers may have taken over the job of self-defense, elk still retain some of the behaviors that accompanied having tusks. Today, elk will curl their top lip and expose their ivories when they feel threatened, a gesture that was probably a lot more intimidating when the tusks were longer and pointier. Now it's more like they're smiling for the camera or sneering at the stupid tourist who got too close. And while elk curl their lips for other reasons, most of them related to mating, if an elk shows you his ivories in this sneering manner, you need to go ahead and get out of Dodge, because that is a threat, and it's often followed by a charge. And tusks or no tusks, antlers or no antlers, they still have hooves, and you are no match for over 400 pounds or 181 kilograms of upset ungulate. In prior centuries, these ivories were highly prized by Native Americans who used them as a form of currency, and also trappers and settlers. They were used to decorate clothes, and they were made into jewelry. And even though these ivories are just a fraction of the size of elephant tusks, like elephants, people did kill elk just for their ivories. It was Teddy Roosevelt who made it illegal to kill elk just for their ivories, and in doing so curtailed the ivory trade. But these unique, not teeth, are considered trophies by modern hunters and still often made into jewelry, but in more of a commemorative remember this hunt way and not a means of getting rich way. Elk ivory earrings sell for $30 to $40, which here in Wyoming is not much more than the lowest possible cost for an elk hunting license and significantly less than the cost of a typical elk tag. Thankfully, hunting elk solely for their ivory, legally or even illegally, is just not worth the effort. Okay, moving on. Next, I want to talk about Bob Ross. Yeah, you know, Bob Ross, the guy with the big perm who hosted an instructional painting TV show on PBS called The Joy of Painting. Soft-spoken and unfailingly positive, he often painted happy little trees and talked about mistakes being happy accidents. That guy. Now, you might be wondering why I want to talk about Bob Ross. What does Bob Ross have to do with nature other than his paintings were largely natural landscapes? Well, I saw a video recently, a clip from an episode of The Joy of Painting. In the clip, Bob is painting one of his typical mountain landscapes, and he starts adding happy little trees and mentions that it would be a perfect place for his little squirrel friend to live. Now, it wasn't unusual for Bob to refer to animals that might inhabit the scenes he was painting, like a cow in a barn or birds that might live in the trees. So you get the feeling when he first mentions this that he's referring to an imaginary squirrel that might live in the scene he's painting. But then he continues saying that he's talked about his little creature pets before and wants to share his most recent one. The camera zooms into his shirt pocket as Bob takes out an eyedropper, sticks the end in his pocket, and out pops a baby squirrel. Peapod the pocket squirrel. Bob Ross was apparently an active wildlife rescuer with a particular fondness for squirrels, which made numerous cameos on The Joy of Painting. And he frequently brought them to the set so he could continue to care for them. Peapod was the most famous, though, and often sat quietly peeking out of Bob's shirt pocket or even gently cradled in his hand while Bob painted. It is, I think, a testament to the fact that Bob Ross was a genuinely gentle soul, an animal lover whose compassion extended far beyond the canvas to embrace every creature, big or small. And in my mind, it elevates him from icon to absolute legend. I can't say that I've ever watched a full episode of The Joy of Painting, but knowing this, I just might start, if only to enjoy the squirrels and other animals that Bob shared on his program. And on that happy little note, my friends, we're going to wrap up this Dirt Dispatch. If you want to support the podcast, there are many, many ways to do that. First of all, you can become a patron. Subscriptions start at just $5 a month. And with 3 paid months, you get some free Dispatches from the Forest merch. Find all the details at patreon.com/dispatchesfromtheforest. You can donate through PayPal or now Venmo too using my email address, dispatchesfromtheforest@gmail.com, which of course is also the best way to contact me if you have a question, comment, or a request for a future episode. You can also donate using the Cash App and the hashtag #ForestNerd. If a check is more your style, just send me an email and I'll let you know where to send it. Go check out the merch store at cafepress.com/shop/dispatchesfromtheforest. Click on products, find something you like. Finally, you can follow Dispatches from the Forest on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. I'm your host, Tim the Nature Nerd O'Hara, reminding you to go outside and get dirty. Dirt Dispatches is a production of Dispatches from the Forest and may not be used or rebroadcast whole or in part without express written permission.